All right, here's where the rubber meets the road. Finally, we're getting around to actually creating something in Ecamm. This lesson is going to spend time creating your first scenes. Now, you're going to have an intro scene, the scene by which you start everything on, and then you're going to have and sometimes that can include a countdown. Countdowns are, depending upon who you talk to, are maybe not necessarily needed anymore, but it's always nice to have to kind of get you set up. Like, you're live, you're committed, but any last little minute adjustments you can do, and how you choose to reveal that to your audience may or may not be something that you want to do. But regardless of what that is, I want to show you how to do it. Then, of course, you'll have your main scene. And we're going to use a technique that was introduced with Bradley Teaches. Thank you, Bradley, for this awesome tip. But it's called the secret weapon screen, secret weapon graphic. And where we're going to take a picture of ourselves and then base the graphic elements are going to go superimposed over the screen by taking a picture of ourselves. And then finally, we'll end with a end screen. So that is the makeup of this particular lesson. I think this one's going to be the most fun because you will start to see the beginnings of your first production. And that's always fun to say, I'm doing this, I'm on camera. So let's get rolling. This is going to be a good one. All right, lesson 5, here we go. Now, this is an interesting lesson because you're going to actually create 2 new scenes in addition to the one that we currently have on the screen. And this is really something that, you want to make sure that you have everything set up right, but it doesn't necessarily mean that this is the end all be all. This is just a way for you to understand the tools within Ecamm. Remember, learn by doing. So the first thing we want to do is get rid of this matte frame that exists around your camera view. What I would recommend you do in the case of just kind of starting fresh, we're going to go ahead and just delete this default scene. Right? And that, kind of like we did in the last lesson, we're just starting out blank again. And now we're going to go ahead and create, the new default scene has been created for us. And now we just add in a camera feed, and there it is. So now what we have is a camera. I just centered it up using the guides like we've discussed. And now I'm just going to zoom in so it occupies the extents of my window. Okay, so this is going to be what people see when they are watching my presentation. Now, this in and of itself is really not all that different. Of course, I've got the lights going and making it look interesting in the background, like I actually have a production studio back here. But at the end of the day, there's not a whole lot that is different from, say, somebody else on a Zoom call, somebody else on a Teams call, somebody who is podcasting just their office, right? So you can do a lot more with Ecamm, so that's what we're going to do. First things first, we want to create a startup graphic. Now, the way I like to do this, well, there's a lot of ways to do this. Ecamm has a handy feature that lets you take a screenshot and then use that screenshot anywhere. Right? It's just a PNG file, and it's the resolution of your scene. In this case, we have our stream. If I go to my stream right here, see, I've got mine set to 4160. Okay, now that's good enough for me. That means it's going to take a 4K image, and you don't have to do that. You can always scaling images down it's pretty straightforward in so many different applications. And we're going to try and stick in Ecamm for as long as we can. There are plenty of tools out there that allow you to do a lot more than what Ecamm offers out of the box, so to speak. But at the same time, there's so much to offer in Ecamm. I think it's better to kind of learn the tool set and understand the capabilities and limitations, and then go from there. So we've got this screenshot ability that I was talking about. So what we want to do is we want to create a static image of you that we're going to use as our intro image for the beginning of our podcast. And we're going to do a little countdown timer. We'll throw in some music there. And basically, after we create that intro screen, we'll cut to this screen. And then we're going to create an outro screen. What I can do is come up with an interesting post. Now, there's all kinds of ways to do this. I'm going to have some of my coffee. It's interesting. Nothing on that side. With the way that you're setting this up, what you want is to have some kind of pose like a thumbnail that you might see on YouTube. That's a pretty common thing. So, you can do, or whatever. You're creating something that's eye-catching. That's the whole point of these YouTube thumbnails. Just having your face up there, not going to do a whole lot for your, first of all, for your credibility. And secondly, that tells the potential viewer nothing about the podcast. So let's say I want to talk about, as I mentioned a couple of times, I'm a pilot. What if I did something like this and did that, right? So what I want to do, you can't see my eyes right now, which probably freaks you out, huh? You go to here, I'll do this real quick. We'll go to the recording window, the recording pull-down menu. You can see this option here, Save Photo, right here. So what you need to do is set up your pose, and you can do one of two things. You can learn the keyboard alternate, which is Shift-Command-G, or you can have it ready to go like this, and then just click Save Photo. It will not capture this menu that's overlapping my screen, so you could certainly do that. So I'm going to do that just because, right? So here, I tell you what, I'm going to do, let's see, Command-Shift-G, all right. Or Shift-Command-G, depending. It's always, on the Macintosh, it's always been Command-Shift or Command something. I don't understand why these are all of a sudden interchangeable, but apparently they are. So the Command key, the Shift key, and G will give me my alternates. And so what I'm going to do, I can't wait to show you some of the other features of other ways to input into Ecamm. It's so cool. There's so many different ways to do this. We're just doing the basic methods. It's kind of like learning long division, for those of you who remember long division, and then learning simplified division. It's the same concept. We're going to learn the long division method first. I know it's tedious, but at the same time, it helps you understand what's going on underneath. And to me, that's far more useful, because if something's not behaving the way that you expect it to, you get confused really quickly, right? And we talked about audio as being one of those potential culprits in our journey through Ecamm, and it will not to scare you off or get you all kind of give you anxiety about audio, but it can be challenging for a lot of people after you get this whole video thing done. So anyway, let's get back to this. So I'm gonna put my glasses back on, because I'm gonna do a podcast about these Ray-Ban aviators, right? And so I'm gonna get my keys ready. So I got my Command Shift. Right, and now, so I'm going to strike a pose, except I'm going to contort my hands a little bit. Go into Ecamm, Command-Shift. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. All right, so you have to think in terms of what's going to be the best pose. So if I want to do something like this, right, like I'm pointing to the sunglasses, that's the topic, right? And now I just did Command-Shift-G. You didn't even see this hand move. And now, if I go over into my recordings folder, you should see your photo, and it's called photo something and the date that you created it. If I hit the space bar, there it is. There's my 4K image of me pointing to my glasses. Okay, so this is going to be our startup. So when we're doing our countdown to start the podcast, that's the image we're going to use. That also becomes very useful if you're trying to lay out your graphics. Bradley Vincent, who I totally admire, he's a great teacher. He used to do, or he maybe still does, a technique called the secret weapon graphic. And shout out to Bradley for this particular tip. But now what he used to do is you create a screenshot using the Mac OS screenshot, and then you would bring that into something like Canva, or you could bring it into Photoshop Elements, and then add in all your graphics relative to what the size of your screen is, the shape of your screen is going to be, and that works great. But now you can do a lot of the stuff that he did in his lessons. You can do it directly inside Ecamm. So we're going to do that. We're going to take advantage of the features in Ecamm, so you don't have to use those other tools just yet. All right, so we've done that. And so let's go ahead and create a new scene. So you click the little plus icon in your scenes window here. Click plus. Now, again, if you've set up things correctly, you should have a blank screen like this, which is fine. And it says, notice that up here, it's highlighted. This is something that it's hard to get used to, but I think it's something that as a user of Ecamm, to help you organize things a little bit better, just name things as you create them. And it'll autofill a lot of stuff for you, but if you have a bunch of new scenes on your scene list, it doesn't distinguish. It's not like you can only have one new scene. You can have lots of new scenes. So we're going to call this intro, right? And like I said, way back when we started talking about the user interface, I'm going to click and then drag that to the top, because this is the order in which my show is going to go. And then I'm going to double click on default scene, and I'm going to call this main, like that. Okay, so now I've got intro and I've got main. All right, so I can switch between these two. That's how you do that. So what are you going to put in intro? Well, inside intro is where we're going to use this graphic that we created. So you go to your recordings folder, wherever you set that up. I created one called class on my desktop, just so it's easy for me to find. And then you pick that photo. Oh, and a little tip. If you want to do like quick screenshots and do multiples, almost like you're doing like a pulse record, if you just hold down Command-Shift-G and make as many poses as you want, it'll create as many screen captures as you want, and you'll end up with a lot very quickly. So number one, use it with caution. Number two, it's a great way if you don't have the exact pose, but you're kind of doing your model thing, that kind of stuff. You might find an image that works out best for you, and it may not be the one that you originally started with. Hold down Command-Shift-G until you get it right. Anyway, we'll go ahead and drag. We're in our intro scene now. By the way, you can switch between these scenes. You see the little plate icon that shows up, right? Now, the gray outline around the scene name indicates the currently active scene. And if I click on main, you'll see that now main is active. And also there is a thicker white border around the main thumbnail. So we're going to go back to intro. And if I just click the little play icon, boom, it switches me over. All right, back into Finder. And I'm just going to click and drag that image right into Ecamm. I didn't have to go into the overlays panel or anything like that. But it did create inside the overlays panel photo on blah, blah, blah. So it pulls the name of the file and puts it into your overlays. So you might want to rename this again. So I'm going to call this sunglasses. opening. Okay. And this one I can do all kinds of things with. For instance, just like we were talking about before, if you hit the little gear icon or the little pencil icon, you can change things. So if you want to change your opacity now, remember you do have a black background. So opacity will control really it looks like the brightness of the image if it's against a black background. If you put it against a white background, it would look brighter. It would look more washed out. So you can do that if you want. If you wanted to put a border around here, you could say, I want a color from my border, and I'm going to pick one of my colors that I used before. And I am going to set that border width to something a little bit thinner, and I'm going to leave it square. This just gives people, an understanding that this is a frame. And when you're streaming or if you're recording, this frame will exist around your image, your scene. All right, so we have now got that. Now what to do? Well, remember before I was talking about with the layouts, I hit the Command tilde button to get rid of a lot of these buttons on here because when I'm doing layouts, I do not like to have my screen cluttered. This is what I'm going to do here. So Command tilde, that goes away. And now it's just me, the border, and my sunglasses. So let's say I wanted to create some shapes. And what I'm going to do here is create something that is... You can take this one of two ways. If you're putting this, let's say you're putting it on YouTube. YouTube tends to want to put the thumbnail or prefers the thumbnail and the start of your video to be roughly the same. And certainly the content that you're putting onto YouTube should match what the title is and what the thumbnail is. Otherwise, it's kind of false advertising, and YouTube does not like that. So we're going to create something here is our opening screen for the show. And again, opening screens are something that are completely optional these days. I would imagine if you're doing a live stream, you could keep your opening screen, but if you're going to do something that's recorded, you don't need one of these. You might start with it, but you don't need a countdown or anything like that. You'd start with that and you'd immediately go into your main scene. So let's go ahead and create some shapes on top of the screen and give them some character, shall we? All right, let's do that. So I'm going to create a square. Now that's taking up, or a rectangle. It's taking up the entire image here. We don't want that. So I can scale it down. Again, I can just pinch on or scroll on your mouse. I can do different things with this. So let's say right now I've got a gradient background on this rectangle. Now, what if I don't want that size shape? Well, I can do this. I can do this, right? What if you want to get a little artsy fartsy, right? And we're going to go ahead and throw in a little bit of rotation, right? And now what it's going to appear to the user is if you place it off screen like this, let's go ahead and go up. See, kind of looks like those weird polygonal patterns that you see. Not weird, but polygonal patterns that you see. Notice that also it remembers your last settings. So in the case of the way I've been playing around with Ecamm, it remembers that I was using this kind of purple-blue gradient, which matches my lighting setup behind me. So I'm just going to keep it that way. But here's how you change it. You click on the edit icon, and then you can select here. So if I want color, it'll pick a singular color. If I want the gradient, I can do that. If I want motion, now what motion does, you can see your gradient rotates around the center point of your object. This is it's an on-off thing. You don't have necessarily specific control over where that center point is, but it gives you the option to add some dynamic colorization to your image. And you mix that in with, say, something like opacity, right? And then if you wanted to, you could put a border on that too, right? And so now I've created a kind of a different shape that's as my scene or as my show or as my presentation is counting down, this kind of stuff is just rotating in the background in addition to the timer going down. So it's just a matter of personal taste, and obviously if you have corporate guidelines that you have to follow, ask your designer, whoever's in charge of your corporate standards, your logo standards, to give you some pointers as far as layouts and color schemes. There may be a color palette that the company wants to use. Make sure to stick to that. Don't go off on your own wild color palette. That's why they hire these folks and pay them lots of money to figure that stuff out. Even if you think it's boring, because they often are, you want to make sure that you're following the company policies when it comes to the marketing of your brand. So we've got this going. I think I'll leave the opacity in, but I'm going to go back and just turn it into a gradient so it stays fixed like that. And you know what? I kind of like the border because you see what it does? Because I have it going from the corner here. See that? I have it going from the corner here to the corner here. It kind of looks like a cutout. This looks like almost like a trapezoidal shape now. And to be honest with you, that was totally unplanned. But hey, yeah, I know what I'm doing. So this is one way to do that. Now, this is also one of these fun things you can do. And we haven't talked about this transition pull down here. So what happens when you select transition? You'll see these different options here. You've got fly in from auto. Auto, basically the Ecamm selects what's the best place for the object to fly in from. In this case, I want it to fly in from the left. So when I start my scene, it's going to kind of come in. So I go back into my main screen and I want to show you how the transition works. Now I played around with the transitions a little bit, and it turns out because you make rotations to your objects, sometimes flying in from left or flying in from right may not translate to flying in from the left or flying in from the right. I know it's not necessarily intuitive, but this is why you get to play a little bit. So I actually have this coming in from the bottom, and watch what happens. If I go from my main scene back to intro, that's what I wanted. So this is coming in from the bottom, and I understand why. So if you click on the edit icon here, you can see that my rotation is set to this, and right there, 24. And what that's doing is that the original orientation of my rectangle was this. So if I'm flying in from the left, it normally would, if it was kept in its original orientation, it would just fly in from the left. But because I rotated it, flying in from the left almost looks like it's coming down from the top. And so coming in from the bottom of this rectangle that's now down here, it looks like it's sliding over. So you have to play around with those a little bit. But I like this is the fun part of setting up Ecamm. So now I've got a shape here, and let's say I want to do another shape, except this time I want that shape to be going across the bottom here. So what I'll do is I'll create another rectangle, and this time, because I want to keep my orientation the way I have it, I'm going to simply drag it into place. Like that. And then let's see. Well, actually, you know what? Let's do this. I'm going to drag it And this will be a fun one. Okay, so now what happens is you've got your main scene and look at the transition. Okay, that's not exactly what I want. I want this rectangle now to shoot over all the way from the right and come over all the way to the left. So I'm going to now select my transition, fly in from right, and get off of that and go main. And this is how you test it. It's real simple. Boom. So now I've got two different things coming in towards each other, right? And I like the opacity settings on the other one, so I'm going to roll with a similar opacity, but because and you see how the borders are intersecting like this, right here. See this? I actually like that look. I think because it's kind of geometrical. I like that look, and you notice how the angle of this particular rectangle almost matches that of the microphone. So it almost looks like it's meant to be there. So then I'll do one final rectangle, and actually, you know what? Let's do a different shape. Let's do a different shape, and we will go ahead and create a shape. It's going to automatically do rectangle, and I'll hit edit, and this time I'm going to change it to a circle. And we're going to move that, we're going to zoom that circle way back. And I'm going to put this in the corner here, and I have something to put in here. So again, with the gradient, if I click on this, you can see there's the gradient setting here, but you also notice that there is a way to change that orientation. So let's say I wanted it to make it look like there's a light source, and perhaps instead of using this purple, what I want to do is, and I'm sure if you've used any apps on Mac OS before that have color swatches, you can click and drag, and that'll copy that color swatch over. And then I'll just drag this down and maybe tint it slightly blue. All right. So now I have the appearance of something that is maybe shaded a little bit to match a 3D. You're going to be able to accomplish only so much within Ecamm, but you're organizing your entire scene with Ecamm right now, which is great. And you can do all your layouts if you want right here. And I think we'll go ahead and leave that for now. And we'll get rid of our window here. So what am I going to put here? What am I going to put here? What is all this for? Usually this is meant for additional overlays to go on top of this. So I have, and this is available on the Discord server, the Ecamm Discord server. I'm doing this for fun. Again, I'm not an employee or a contractor of Ecamm, but they did make this available for their users. They have this, I'll hit the space bar. You can see this is a image that they released that has it's actually a transparent image. That's that black portion of the background is transparent, fully transparent, and it's a QuickTime movie. So I'm going to put that inside my circle. So to do that, I just click and I drag it into the scene. Click, drag it in. It's going to go there. Now it places it there. Okay, so again, I have to zoom this out. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to zoom it out. And then I'm going to place it kind of center of this circle. Special shout out to Mr. Marshall, who created this graphic for the folks at Ecamm. I think it's pretty cool. So because this animation is in a circle, Notice I can hit the arrow keys to do precise placement of my objects. If I want to zoom in, whoop, that's too much. So let me come out a little bit. Okay, sometimes you don't get the control you want when you use a trackpad. All right, there we go. So it stopped playing though. It was playing before. Why did it stop? If you go over your animation, notice that now inside my overlay scene, you see imagine, correct. That's imagine, create, repeat, right? Loop. So this one is an actual, this is an animation you can see by the arrow. Everything else are static graphics, right? So what I want to do here with this, if I click play again, it'll play. It's not really centered. Like, there we go. All right, so I'll let it play through. And it'll stop again. I don't want that. I want it to keep going. Fortunately, this is a looping animation, which means that even though it's a set amount of frames, if you loop it, it just looks like a continuous thing. So you go back to your overlay for the image, for the animation, and under the play bar, or at the play bar, if you click on the little down arrow right at the end here, you'll see autoplay. So when the scene starts, it automatically starts playing, and you can start from the beginning or the last location. So let's say you switch off to another scene and you come back to this. Instead of it starting all over, it can play from the last known location. And then when it's finished, do nothing, hide temporarily, hide, stay hidden, or loop. So we're going to tell it to loop. So now if I click there, you see loop is selected, and if I hit play, come on, there we go. It should just sit there rotating, something fun to look at. And sure enough, that's what it's doing. It's just looping. You can do this for any animation. If you get animations that have green screens in them, you can screen those out. There is, you would see it here, blend mode here. You see green screen right here. So your blend mode, if you had an animation with a green screen, and there are plenty of those on the internet. If you go to, let's see, Envato Elements, if you go to Motion Array, if you go to Pond 5, those three have a lot of different animations. Even Adobe has a whole section. Their gallery, for instance, has just all kinds of clip art and thumbnails of animations that are against a green screen. And if you have the Creative Suite, I believe you can add that. Maybe be $25 a month, but you could subscribe for a month, get all the content you need, and then it's yours. So it's up to you how you want to do this. But if you had a blue screen, now why would you use a blue screen? A few reasons. If you've never worked with transparent backgrounds before, a blue screen works when you have green. So if today was St. Patrick's Day and I was wearing green and I'm against a green screen, guess what's going to happen to me? My shirt, is because it's green, will disappear. And if I actually have a light up Guinness necklace that I got from St. Patrick's Day years ago, and I put that against a green screen, and you could see right through it. So just where the Guinness logo was highlighted with the LED, it was kind of cool looking. But so that's when you would switch to blue screen, and blue screen works well. You can find actually a lot of things like microphones. Even you can find the microphones that are painted blue or painted green, so that when you do your green screen, they're gone. You don't see them. Especially if they're boomed just slightly out of frame. You put them in a blue screen or you put them, a blue mic against a blue screen. You dial up that blue screen setting. It's gone. It's totally gone. It works great. Okay, so and we're gonna leave. Well, let's see. We'll have this come in from. Let's see. We don't need. So okay, yeah. One other thing, blend mode. I could go to darken, for instance. Well, darken's not going to do anything. Let's do color burn. Oh, that doesn't do anything either. Sometimes this has effects, and sometimes it doesn't do much of anything. And I think it has a lot to do with the source file. Yeah, so here, this is soft light. I could go to hard light, which is basically like it is. Pin light. These are similar to the Photoshop filters, but you see here's overlay. Now what's cool about this is that it takes the background colors and overlays. So if you have a white animation like I have right here, it's blending in with the background colors, and it's actually brightening it. So I'm going to leave that so it's not popping you right in the face. Okay. And I'm sure there's a style guideline that I'm violating. Sorry, folks at Ecamm, didn't mean to do that. But that's what I'm going to roll with here. Now, let's go ahead and put down a timer. Okay. So we'll go back and we'll add a timer. And I'm just going to use, let's see. You can pick all kinds, different people. Look, there's a lot of people like color schemes. A lot of people have favorite. Technically, it's called a typeface, not a font. You want to rankle a designer, you start calling them fonts instead of typefaces, and you're triggering some OCD in them. So just be careful about that. And notice that even Ecamm follows the right convention and calls it a typeface. So if I wanted to do something boring like Arial or Arial Black, I could do that. And you see that this is the nice thing about this is that it's a monospace font, which means the font is not compressing or expanding as the numbers are changing. They're staying an equidistant amount from each other, which means that I can put this in a location on my scene here, and it won't like squeeze in and out, right? So we'll do that. And text color, let's go ahead and make it that orange. Okay, and then we'll click add. And then I can put that right down here. So now I've got my countdown timer. Here's another thing. And this one I'll show you. We can put a transition on here. Let's do that. Let's have this one fly up from the bottom. Well, first of all, let's just see what our animations look like at this point. So I'll go back to my main screen. Hey, long time no see. And then go to this. All right. So you got some dynamic elements going on right there. And I kind of like that. So we'll leave that as is. Now, the countdown, you could either say show begins in, like we did way back a couple lessons ago, or you can just put a timer in there. And if your audience doesn't know what that timer is for, then there's some assumptions being made, right? And so I tend to opt for the concept of less is more. So even for instance, like this logo here, I'm going to do something here that actually will work out really nicely. So let's because I want this whole element to be a little bit smaller. So I'm going to create a folder. You may recall that from the last lesson. I'm going to move it right here inside of my overlays panel. It's called a group. All right. And then I'm going to put my imagine, create, repeat in there, and then my circle in there. So now they're both in there. And if I turn the whole group off, the whole thing just goes away, which is kind of nice. So I can have this turn on whenever I want. But if I select the group, there's a little link icon here. To move this entire group together, I can do that. Unfortunately, things like scale do not work. So this also might be kind of a fun way to do this. So it's not occupying as much on the screen space, but you're getting the whole message here, you know, and it's only revealing itself as it comes in and out of frame. So design choice, sure. Was this the way it was originally intended for? I don't know. But again, I can do what I want right now. And again, I will point out that I got this from the Discord server, the Ecamm Discord server. So you need Discord, and that's free. You can download the Discord app. It's Discord, and create an account, join the Ecamm server on Discord, and this file is available amongst a multitude of other things that that Marshall created for Ecamm. And let's see, so we got this, and we've got our countdown. So we've got two little motion elements here, and one final thing I want to put in here, we're gonna create a title here for people to see. And so what I'll do is I'll create text, and I'll call it Aviators. And let's see what's come up. Let's get cool. Let's see, cool, or all right, let's do this. So say Aviators. Still cool. And this time I'm going to set, I'll do the text to be some kind of color. Like I can just pull now, I can pull from any one of these purple hues. So like if I want this Ecamm color, I can do that. Click add. Oops. You have to select the text before you do that. Select the text. Click on this. Click on your eyedropper. Find your color you want to use. And it should be switched. And maybe that is blending too much, don't you think? So what happens if I make some changes to this? One of the things you can do, border does not work, though it's not an outline. So if I did a border, it's going to do it around the entire object. That doesn't, and I don't like that look, so we're not going to go with that. I can also do things like I could do a drop shadow on here if I wanted to. But I think for the purposes of this text, I think I'm just going to make it white. Or I could do orange. So let's see what the two look like. Okay, and here's a way to duplicate something real quick. Hold down the Option key while you have an object selected, click and drag. And now, if you want to do side-by-sides, I could edit the text, go back, click on my white, save. So which one's better? Who wore it better? So if I go, and this is a way to do it. So I would place this. Oh, you know what? Look at that. What if you did that? Now you got a, I mean, you could do this with a drop shadow, but you can, I just did it. And also one of the things you can do is you go to the top aviators here, go to edit text, and then there's an effect. You can say light glow, right? You can do a shadow, you do light glow. So we'll do light glow. And that should add, it looks like it did. Let's go ahead and look in. Yep, you can see there's a very light fuzzy haze around there. Maybe I don't want it on that one. So we'll click on that again and click on edit text. And we'll turn off the light glow effect. Yep, that's gone. And now, oops. What I'll do is I'll go to the under one, click on settings, edit text, and this one I'll do So now the orange underneath is kind of glowing a little bit. Let's get out of the zoom view, and there we go. So this is something you can do real quick in Ecamm. You can set this stuff up. You can play with shapes, intersecting shapes together. You can come up with all kinds of cool designs. For instance, you could also do things like if I wanted this circle to have a drop shadow, so it popped out over this rectangle. I could just select the circle and then turn on my drop shadow, and you're not going to see it that way, so maybe like that, right? And now you can see the effect that it has. Oops, there we go. Okay, so you might have noticed that I've got a lot of things when I'm scrolling and stuff like that in the background. You may notice that things are going haywire behind me. Command Z is always your friend. If you see something happen that shouldn't have happened, Command Z immediately, get it back to where it was. But what you can also do is go through and I'll zoom in here and hit these little the lock icons. So I'm just going to turn these all on. Once I've got my things like I want them, my countdown. The countdown I'm going to edit. So I'm going to go to countdown from 2 minutes. Okay, so now it's counting down. And aviators, these two. Now I might want to group these two as well. So we'll call this Ecamm animation, and then I'll create a new group, and it automatically nests it whatever is selected. So I'll call this title text, and I'll drag this up to the top. Remember, Ecamm works in a layer system, and with the objects on top being on top of everything else. So I'll add this in the title text like that, and you see what happened there? So the orange went in after the white, and now it's all screwed up here. So to get that back, I just click and drag that underneath, and it's now back like it was. What's cool about grouping your overlays is the fact that you can quickly turn off groups on and off groups at a time. So like that, the Ecamm animation, right? And I'm curious, let's see, if we do the Ecamm animation and we fly in from the right, or here, let's do this. You can spin in too. Let's spin in from the right. And I'm assuming that if I spin a circle, you're not even going to know, but let's go ahead and spin this in from the right too as my transition for that. Okay. There we go. Now that actually kind of works. Look at that. Kind of looks like spinners. You remember the spinners on people get those old Escalades and they put big spinners on them. Look at that little rotation that happens. And notice that I didn't have to change scenes to test this out. I just turned the group on and off. See what I'm talking about? It's kind of cool. Okay, so this is my title screen. And now what do I want to do? Well, I'm going to add music. And we haven't really touched music all that much. Now, I use a website called Epidemic Sound. And Epidemic Sound is one that I've been subscribed to for almost a year at this point. And I like to cycle through a lot of different websites like this. As I mentioned before, Envato Elements, Motion Array, they all have audio that you can use for royalty free. So you might want to try their catalogs. Another one is, I don't know if it's called Licked or Liked, but it's Lickd. I don't know how it's pronounced, and you'll have to forgive me for that. But the cool thing about that particular website is that they will license commercially available tracks to you. So popular music, they'll license. There's some hitches though. First of all, you can only use it once. So one video you make, you can use that. And secondly, depending upon the popularity of the track, you may end up paying a lot of money for that track. So you have to gauge the importance. But LICKD, not ED, LICKD.com for sound. I've already got some music in here. And let's see, where is it? Oh, nope, that's not it. That's not it. Here we go. So if I hit the preview spacebar. All right. So this is a royalty-free track that I got from Epidemic Sound. So I'm going to drag this music file to an MP3 into, I got to pick it from the icon. Come on. There we go. Nope, I don't want that. I want this one. There we go. And I'm going to drag it into my sound effects panel. And now it's here. So now it's playing inside Ecamm. Now, you see what's happening though, is it's going between scene to scene to scene. Right, I go back to the original. Right, the song's always playing. So let's say you just want it in the title. And I don't want to compete with the music here. Let's say you just want it in the title. So the way to do that is inside your scene, we'll go back to this, and you click on the little gear icon next to the track name, and it says add to scene. You can also add a hotkey, and you can control the volume of this track. So let's say the track comes in too loud, you can control it right here, independent of your system audio. So I'm just going to click add to scene, right? And now it's there. Now, see what happens when I go to this scene now? It goes away. Go back to the main scene. Right? So now what's cool about that, each scene can have its own music track, which is really cool. If you're trying not to, well, I made it too loud. If you're trying not to make it so that if you don't want to have necessarily the track stop, you can, if I go back to my scene settings here, now this is just my window controls. Remember, Command tilde brings us up. I hit the little gear icon. Look at this. So this is the soundtrack that's inside this scene, and there is a checkbox. Oops. It goes away. Well, here, we can zoom in on macOS. There we go. And now it says stop when scene ends. And it's checked on by default. So if I want to return to the previous behavior, but I have it associated with a certain scene, I can do that. So why would you do that? All right, let's say this. So I'm going to turn this off. And now I'll go to my next scene. And it's still playing. But let's say I want to turn this off. Okay, it goes off. Right? Now that track is not going to play anymore until I either initiate it from the sound effects panel, or if I go back to my intro scene, it starts playing again. And if I go to main, guess what? It's playing still. So now this becomes the sound effects panel becomes my control panel for this sound. Okay, so there's a lot to take in there, but one of the things that I like to do is once I get into the main scene, I don't want to compete with the audio. So one of the things you can do is you can create, so it's like I want to assign this to this scene as well. So you see down here, add to scene. So I'm in my main scene right now. If I click add to scene, it's there, right? But all right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the sound back up just so you can see the effect of what happens when you adjust individual volumes between scenes. So I've got the same track assigned to both scenes, and I've also told it that don't stop playing when going from scene to scene. But you can control the volume. So let me turn up the volume a little bit here. Okay. And now I'm going to go into this little gear icon here for my main scene, and I'm going to drag this volume slider down to a fraction of the overall volume. Okay, and now if I click on intro, see it's at full volume, and as soon as I go over to main, it's still playing, but the volume's dropped. Isn't that cool? So now you can use the same audio track throughout your entire video if you want, just by enabling that loop icon, which is this guy right here. But it'll keep looping the sound if you want to. And then, so what does this guy do now? What does this volume slider do? This is the master volume for all instances of that track. So usually you leave that set to 100, and then you have each scene individually have its own music with it. And it's like, well, okay, Jeremy, but I don't want this to play all the way through. There's a way to control that. Well, you can simply stop it by clicking the little pause icon here, and it'll go away like that. You can also assign it hotkeys. We'll get the hotkeys as the very last step, just so you can go through your flow. But that's how you would do that. The thing I like about this also is that you have individual scenes assigned to the same audio file. So it sounds like you've got a sound engineer in the background dropping the sound. That's called ducking in a lot of cases. Ducking is usually a temporary effect where your audio of any kind of background music or effects drops so that you can hear the speaker. But in this case, we're just lowering it completely across the board. So it doesn't matter what's going on. It just becomes background music at that point. So yeah, it's like having a little mini sound engineer. Now, you might say, well, what if I want different tracks? Or what if I want different music? You can do that. You can have one song assigned per scene, however. So let's say you wanted to go to a different version of this same song. Well, Epidemic Sound, actually, this is one of the cool features of Epidemic, and a lot of other websites are starting to do this too, is that they have different, they have ways that you can pull out different versions of the same song. So let's say, for instance, you just want the bass riff, and maybe instead of the hi-hat, you got the bass drum going, right? Maybe you have something like that. You could switch to that file, have its own volume settings, and then assign it to this scene, and it'll automatically blend from the audio that was in the previous scene to the current scene. All right, one more, and then we will be done this particular lesson, which I believe now, let me look at where we're at. We're at an hour in, so this is not bad. For our first time creating a flow for our scenes, this is actually pretty good. You're doing a good job. So, all right, so we've got this, and let's say now we want to create an ending scene. At the very minimum, you should have a start, show, and ending. Intro, show, outro, whatever you want to call it. So we're going to create a new scene here, and it'll be blank again. I will call this outro. And now, let's say I want a different view of me, right? Let's say I want to do, I don't know, like me just kind of being enthusiastic, right? And then put thanks for watching, see you next time, right? So one way to do this, actually, you know what? Instead of creating a new scene, let's duplicate the intro, because I want to use everything, or I want to use some of the same elements, but I don't want to use the same image, and I don't want to use the countdown timer. Okay, so I'm gonna delete that scene. We've already created a new scene already, so no sense in doing it again. And I'm gonna click on intro right here, right? And then duplicate, and we'll call this outro. Now all the scene settings are maintained. So now I could say, well, here, we don't need our timer because that's going to go away. And let's say, I'm going to have the music at the current level. Let's see if I go back to main. See, it drops down. So as I'm leaving the show, it can return back to the intro levels, which is kind of cool. So I notice what's happening here. Why is the music stopping? Stop mute when scene ends. I don't want that on. So now, go here. Right? So now it's maintaining my audio levels. Go back to main. It's low. Intro, high. Lowered. High again. Okay. So now I want to change this. And we don't need the music at the moment. So I want to change this image. So I'm going to go back to my main. And it's going to try and play again. So we'll just do that. You can also mute. You don't have to worry about that. But let's say I want something like that, right? Now, this is a little bit tricky, right? Because, why? You need one of the hands to do this. So this is where having alternative input methods actually works really well, because what you're doing is you're essentially there's these pedals that you can attach to your computer. And I should probably go get some, because I know I mentioned this in a previous lesson. I've just been putting it off because I didn't want to dink around with hardware that I thought was going to be substandard or something like that. But in any case, I think the pedals might be useful in this particular instance, because there is no countdown timer, right? That would be cool. It would be a countdown timer to do that. One way to do this would to use another application that does have a countdown timer. But I could do something like that, or like that. And I think that's what I'm going to get, something like that. And, I'll put my sunglasses back on. All right. So, like that. Okay. So then I'm going to do, and if you think I look like a dork, I kind of do. So I'm going to do Command-Shift-G. And there it is. So now I've got my background image. So go back to outro here. I'm going to turn that off. And rather than dragging in that image, I can click on my sunglasses opening here, click on the gear icon, say replace asset. And when I do that, I can now pick a different image to replace this current image with. So I'm just going to do the one I just took. Boom. Everything else is the same. So I didn't have to do anything. And now I can go in here and change my text, right? So let's get rid of our commands. They keep popping up. But let's see here. We'll go to our aviators. We'll turn this guy off. And I'm going to... Actually, I'm not going to use that backdrop anymore. So to get rid of layers, I just delete them. Boom. And you can always make copies. Again, you can undo whatever you want to do. It's up to you. I'm going to move this. Oops, that's right. I have it locked. See, that's when you know you have it locked, when the whole thing moves. So you turn off your lock. And I want to say... Thanks for watching. And then Shift Enter will let me get to, like we did in the first lesson where we were doing a scene layout. Maybe I'll get rid of 2 exclamation points is a little too much. So see you next time. And this one, instead of it being Arial Black, I will do, just Arial Italic. See you next time. And instead of, so let me go ahead and set this up correctly. So this will be at 72, like that. See? I hit return when I zigged when I should have zagged. So that's 72. And then the Arial Italics, or I could do bold italics. And I'll make this one 48. So it'll always be at this ratio between the two. Click Save. All right. And now that's centered on the screen. Well, it's like, well, Jeremy, then that means you're not centered on the screen. Right. Because what did I do? I didn't play with my rule of thirds. So if I was that concerned about it, I could zoom up this image, but I'm not. I could zoom up this image. So what you could do here, I mean, are people going to dog you for having this slightly off? Probably not. Especially if you had a really cool thing to show them. So here you go. You now have your intro, your outro, your main scene, and you're ready to rock and roll. I mean, this is it. That's all there is to it. Now you're like, oh, well, that was a lot. Yes, it is. It is a lot, especially the first time you use it. But it gives you a concept. It gives you an idea of what's possible with Ecamm. We created 3 scenes. An intro, a main, and an outro. And for a lot of folks out there, that's all you need, especially if you're doing a podcast where it's mainly you as a talking head. Because within that main scene, you can do things like switch camera angles. You could add other overlays. There's no reason to create an entirely new scene. You notice that I haven't changed scenes this entire lesson, right? It's always been the 2 windows. And it's always been, with the 2 windows well, I got to use this hand because over here, these 2 windows, still getting used to this. So these 2 windows, and then the one of the screen. So that's how I could do this all in one shot. So I have 3 cameras set up and I can go through these. If I wanted to, I could turn cameras on and off. Totally up to you. If I wanted to switch back to another scene, I have one which is just another scene where it's just this main camera right here. And you've seen this one before. Here I am. And all I'm doing is I'm cycling between these 2 scenes. So if I want me larger than not larger this way, but larger on your screen, this is what I would do. And then I could cycle back to here. And this is where I'm going over and doing my product demo. So that's literally 2 scenes. I don't even do an intro or an outro for each lesson. For me, it's not necessary. So I hope this gives you some insight as to where you can take things with Ecamm. This has all been created within Ecamm. You have not gone to any other application at this point to do any kind of graphics work. And here you are, you've created an intro that's, let's go ahead, there we go. We've created an intro, we've created a main scene, and again, we could add overlays here if we wanted to, and then we've created an outro. And the outro maintains all the same animations that we set up in our intro because we duplicated the scene. So that's a quick way to set up a scene because you already have another scene that you like and you just want to do it again, but with some slightly different content in it. Duplicate it and then go on from there. Okay, so what happens in the next lesson? We're going to talk about teleprompters, scripts. We're going to talk about looking the camera in the eye, which to be honest, I've been guilty of during this training series because I'm looking down at myself when I should be looking at the camera. So right now, like for instance, I'm looking at the screen and I think I'm looking at you. No, I'm looking at you if I'm looking here or if I'm looking here. But getting used to talking into a lens can be a little bit on the disconcerting side the first time you do it. So we're going to go through that. And then we're going to talk about using bullet points versus a full script. And if you're going to use a teleprompter, what are some of the tools that you would use to give yourself an edge when you're creating content and it doesn't look like you're a news reporter sitting there looking at the text as you're reading it? That you don't want that. So we're going to cover that in the next lesson. And then we got some more fun stuff coming up after that. So we'll see you in the next one. Have a good one. Bye.